It's time for the Bird Brains. News and notes about the Baltimore Orioles and their minor league affiliates. With our own Bird Brain hosts, Dave Biesecker and Jeff Baker.
I'm here.
Buckle up, sit back, and enjoy. You never know what's coming with the Bird Brains.
Yeah. Well, last week, Dave, it's good to have you back.
Thanks.
We missed you. And Derek is also with us again this week.
Yeah, 2 in a row.
So
Can't get rid of me.
That's right.
Is that what we're supposed to say? It's kind of like a bad cold?
Yeah.
No.
That's,
It's good to have someone on here with me because he helped me remember things we said. But last week we were celebrating. We were in the midst. When we recorded, it was a 5-game win streak. They went on to win 6 because the day we recorded they won, and then they went to Sacramento.
Yeah, we were actually feeling pretty good that they were on a 6-0 streak going into Sacramento, thinking this could be a real turnaround for on the West Coast.
Well, Seattle is contending in
They're
the
a good
West,
team.
and so you go out there and when you see them sweep a 5-1, 3-2, and 4-3 victories.
Yeah.
I mean, these are fairly close games as they were against Chicago, which doesn't say as much other than But it was nice to see them put together some wins, and of course it got people thinking, wow,
Maybe we're turning things around, getting a little bit of momentum going.
And then you go out and play Sacramento, the team formerly known as the Oakland A's, in a minor league ballpark, and they end up losing 2 out of 3.
Yeah.
And what did that really show us? Well, it showed us that Charlie Morton has no room for error at all. And I think that's where we're at with Charlie Morton.
Yeah, for people, good.
He can't win Major League Baseball games anymore.
Not consistently.
With his B stuff.
Right.
We talk a lot about pitchers being able to get through a game when they don't have their A game, so to speak. They find a way. I think what we're seeing with Charlie, he had 2 straight starts that really gave you hope because he really did pitch well.
On the one day I was down there,
Right.
I was
Memorial Day.
I was kind of dreading that I had to go down, and Charlie Morton was pitching that day, and he was lights out.
Right.
I think for 6 innings he was lights out. But if you watched that game that he pitched against Sacramento, he had no margin for error, and he was throwing primarily breaking balls that day, like he was almost afraid to throw the fastball, but he just didn't have location with it whatsoever.
And he is now he is now at the point where he doesn't have anything else to fall back on.
Right.
And I think that's what we're seeing. I think that's why teams weren't really excited about the Orioles signing him, to give him this push with this young talent. And I guess that's what we're seeing. And of course, the old Charlie Morton turned up again in Sacramento, and it was pretty ugly.
what's actually really sad is the only game they won that series was the game that Morton started.
Yeah. Yeah, that's true.
Their 2 losses were Creamer's start and Sagano didn't get out of the fourth inning.
And offensively, that's the only game on the whole trip that they scored over 5 runs.
Yeah,
they actually scored 7 runs that game,
and that's been their MO.
Has been.
When they were winning early last year, they were bludgeoning people, and.
Well, even earlier this year, I looked back to see how many times they had scored over 5 runs, and I was thinking that maybe this would be something I would want to bring up, saying how few times they've scored over 5 runs.
Right.
Actually, if you look back earlier in the year, there was many times where they scored over 5 runs, but now they're not.
Right. Well, and the reason I bring up Charlie Morton is, and it's probably not fair, but the starting staff in general pitched much better during that 6-game win streak, and they were going deep into games, 6-7 innings, quality starts, every one. Right. And the bullpen, I felt like, was able to get healthy again. They got some rest. And the first loss out in Sacramento was Dean Kramer. He gave up 4 runs in the 4th inning after the offense had jumped out to a 3-0 lead. Well, that's been their Achilles heel. They've gotten behind. Well, they had the formula. They got out ahead, and then Kramer ends up giving it up in the 4th inning, and it's like they don't have that magic to be able to come back anymore.
Right.
And so that really was. I mean, Dean Kramer ended up pitching into the 6th inning, which that's a little bit of depth, but 5 1/3, gave up 8 hits and 5 runs.
Well, if you look at ERA numbers wise over the last 10 games, the pitching staff's ERA is 2.6.
Yeah, which explains
you can't really argue with that.
No,
I mean that's the entire team ERA is 2.6, and so really when you're looking at a stat like that, you have to look back and see, once it kind of points back to the offense again, though.
Right. As
far as how much the offense is producing.
Right. But I guess the only thing I would say is the only way with their offense being what it is, they win is when their starting pitching shuts down people. Because coming back, they had just gotten off of the 6-game win streak. Mm-hmm. They were getting quality starts. The bullpen was relatively well rested. And you brought in Cano, Aiken, Dominguez, and Soto, and they weren't charged any runs.
Right.
So, that's kind of the problem. It becomes a self-licking ice cream cone when your starters don't go deep consistently. And so then the next night you have Charlie Morton coming in, giving you 2 1/3.
Yeah, that's the one that eats up your bullpen.
And I guess that's why I led with him, because it just you can't do that. He gave up 4 runs in the 1st inning. Ramon and right away, that's the formula they've had all year, where they can't dig themselves out of the hole, because the offense right now hasn't been that good.
That's right.
So, it's just a matter of constant frustration, because you can't hit your way out of it. It doesn't appear.
No.
And the starting staff isn't strong enough to maintain enough consistency. And then the relievers, by the way, perhaps, and I don't know, I didn't pull up the stats, but the eye test this week for me, the sinker that Sir Anthony Dominguez has come up with has made him a completely different pitcher.
You've got to see a lot more games than I have. I've had some things going on that I haven't been able to watch much of it, so you have to tell me about that.
He has been absolutely lights out.
Well, good.
Because he's keeping guys off his fastball with this sinker. And
they brought it up on the broadcast the other night.
Yeah, he has been absolutely tremendous the last several times out. He pitched in the Kramer loss. He went an inning, gave up 1 hit, struck out 2. Then I want to say he came in also, because who didn't have to come in for Charlie Morton after 2 1/3? Yeah, he was in back-to-back nights. He got a hold that night, as did 5 other guys out of the bullpen. But he pitched another inning. He did walk 1, but he struck out 2, and he only gave up a hit in that one. But I guess my what I'm getting to here a little bit with Sir Anthony is we've seen a little bit of growth and development, even in the midst of this dark cloud season, where you might have to think really hard about whether or not he's a piece you're going to keep at the end of the year. Because if you look, and we talked briefly about this last week, at the end of the year, Sir Anthony, who has an average salary of $8 million a year now, is going to be a free agent.
Okay.
So you have to start making these determinations as to where you want to go with this. Andrew Kittredge, he has a club option for $9 million next year, and I guess, and we talked briefly about it last week, Derek, and get your thoughts again on that. But I don't know how far you tear this team down. But there's, to me, and this was just a reminder this week when they lose 2 out of 3 to the A's. This is just a reminder that this roster isn't good enough right now.
Right.
So they have to do something. And the question is, how far do you rip this down? Do you bring back a guy like Kittredge next year? Because if you don't, you've got to replace him. And
and there's nobody in the
right. And for $9 million
in the pipeline.
For the relievers, I think you're going to wait till the deadline to move them. So you still have over a month to figure out who you want to keep, who you don't.
Right.
But, I mean, Sir Anthony's been their most effective guy out of the bullpen, even including Batista here recently.
Right.
So,
a little bit. Batista's been a little bit erratic, but Sir Anthony, I got to say, earlier in the year, he wasn't throwing that sinker like he is now. And I was like, well, that's an easy cut.
That's also an easy guy to trade, though, at the deadline, because somebody that's going to be trying to win a World Series this year is going to be looking at his,
Right.
you know.
But then again, you're tearing down your team for somebody who could possibly be a good piece next year. While you say that the roster's not good enough, at the same time the roster's not that far away.
That's true
in my mind,
and that's like the worst of all worlds if you're a general manager, because then you got to really make some hard decisions. Derek's point last week was, I think you can still win and sell at the same time.
If you're not going to re-sign him in the offseason, you better trade him. Otherwise,
Sure.
otherwise you lose him for nothing.
Oh, absolutely.
So that's where I'm at with these. These pending free agents, like Cedric Mullins, to me, he's trade bait because you're probably not re-signing him. So why do what you did with Anthony Santander? You're not contending this year. There's no reason, there's no rationale to be like, let's hold on to Santander because we're trying to win a pennant. Right. You're not doing that this year. So
is Bradfield close enough in the minor leagues to be your center fielder next year?
I think, I think Cowser can play center field.
Right. I think you could, given the roster that they have right now, you could get by with Carlson and or Cowser now that he's back, covering that, and you can bring Bradfield along. I think he's not ready yet for this year, but I think maybe next year he could compete. Maybe. We'll see.
Also, I'm not against re-signing Mullins either. My only point is, if you're not going to sign him, you have to trade him. You can't do what you did with Santander, because the reason that they did that, which I can understand, is you're trying to win last year.
Right.
You can't this year now. I don't think. I mean, unless they did something crazy.
Well, and I don't think there's any argument this year that Ryan O'Hearn is absolutely the core player. He is probably on track right now to be an all-star for the first time in his career at 31 years old.
Right.
But again, he's a free agent,
so that's a big decision.
Right.
Do you re-sign him, or he's the best trade bait of anybody on the team.
Somebody's going to want his bat.
They're going to come after him.
Yeah.
That's right. And they're going to come after him with prospects that probably won't help you next year.
Correct.
But they replace the guys that you've traded in the past couple years, the Joey Ortiz, the Kyle Stowers, the DL Halls. Mm-hmm. And so you look at the farm system now, and they have to kind of reboot.
But then if you have any plans on winning next year, now you've got a huge hole in the order. If you trade O'Hearn, I mean, they're already in need of a big bat in the middle of the lineup. The hole that Mountcastle has never filled. He's kind of like my horse that I beat on all the time.
Well,
but yeah, he's created somewhat of a void in that lineup by not being the guy that you hoped he would be.
But and I think during the off season, the Elias front office tried to plug a hole that
O'Neill
but a specific hole. They were having trouble, and they continue to be horrible hitting left-handed pitching.
They are.
And the Tyler O'Neill deal was clearly an effort to try and do that.
It sure was.
Even Ramon Liriano,
Yeah.
is a. It's so bad that the Orioles are 4-14 against left-handed starters this year. 4-14. They're hitting .250 against right-handed pitching. They're hitting .202 against lefties, which is a 48-point difference. And that, my friends, is bordering on historic. And of almost any team in the history of baseball having that much differential between right-handed and left-handed starters. And as a comparison, Detroit is batting .266 against left-handed pitching. Wow. Okay? So when you're batting .202, I mean, that, and so I guess I'm getting at, they tried to plug the hole a little bit with the right-handed bats with Tyler O'Neill, who has clearly not produced for them, been injured more than he's been on the field. And it's a shame, but it's where we are, you know. And so I don't know how you quickly get out of that. I hearken back though, and I think we can all agree, and there's statistics to back me up on this, that offensively, Adley Rutschman is slightly above average offensively. He's been slumping the last year and a half, but offensively, he's starting to come around a little bit. But in the 2019 draft, when he was taken first overall, the second pick was Bobby Witt Jr. Oh. How much would you love to have that right-handed bat in this order?
Yeah.
Now, I get it. That's messes around with your defense and, you know, Gunner and all that. But my point was the bat playing the way it does, you know, in the middle of that lineup, Bobby Witt Jr. would be tremendous.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah. And he would do a lot to help your statistics here against left-handed pitching, I'm sure. I
feel like right now in the MLB, it's Ohtani, Judge, and then Witt next.
Yeah, as far as stardom.
Right.
You're right.
Yeah.
Yeah, no doubt. Because it can be a little bit demoralizing when you look at the statistics, because the Orioles, both in pitching and in hitting, are in the bottom, 4 or 5 teams in
both categories.
In all those categories. So I went out and I got a little. I don't want to geek you out here, Dave, but and I know I can. But I was looking up at one of the advanced metric statistics called WRC plus, which stands for weighted runs created, and they've messed around with the formula. But what they tried to do with this is they tried to allow people to compare apples to apples with this formula that they use to determine who the best overall offensive players are from the standpoint of creating runs. And that's what we're there to do, right, on offense. So they weighted this whole statistic out so that if you are an average major leaguer, your WRC plus is 100.
Okay.
Right? So to give you just a point of reference, Aaron Judge, who is the greatest WRC plus hitter maybe in history, he has a WRC plus of 246. He is 146% better than average at creating runs. That's how good he is. Now, our bright spot in this particular statistic is Ryan O'Hearn, who we talked about, and this is why he will have value at the trade deadline. His WRC plus is 158, so he's 58% better than average. Here's the one to me that I was looking at that really hurts. Kyle Stowers ranks 43rd in all of Major League Baseball with a WRC plus of 128.
And Kyle Stowers is one of the 2 guys that we traded to the Marlins in order to get Trevor Rogers.
Correct.
In return.
He was one of those outfielders.
He was expendable
right
at that time, or considered expendable at that time.
And he was an athletic outfielder.
He was.
And
one of the many left-handed hitters
right.
that we had, so they figured they were trading from a surplus.
So at the time, They were looking at Kauser coming up. They knew they had Kjerstad coming in. They
valued those guys more than they valued
Stowers. And just this week, we sent Heston Kjerstad down to the minors. And for that...
Oh, man!
Heston, I know it's rough. I know it's tough. And it's just not your time yet. But you get the bird turd this week, because while we're looking at one of our cast-offs who you supposedly beat out in the internal talent evaluation in the organization, now you're back down at Norfolk, because that was there were several moves this week which we hadn't really talked about because we were just moaning and groaning about everything else. But Kjerstad was sent down whenever they reactivated Mullins, and
Westberg.
And Westberg was sent down probably Westberg was brought up, and Emmanuel Rivera was cut loose as a corresponding move to make room on the roster. Now,
you're going to go back and talk about RC Plus?
Well,
are we headed in that direction?
No. All I was going to say was Kjerstad was sent down hitting 192. So they need him. Obviously, he is not anywhere close to being the defensive outfielder that Stowers is.
And I thought it was really interesting what Mullins had to say about that. He said Heston's kind of sometimes unorthodox in his gameplay. I would say so. Unorthodox might describe his play, especially in the outfield.
Well,
he said, but he's a really good player nonetheless. Some things he needs to work on. I think he was able to see that and feel that during his time here. So, I mean, Cedric's saying, he wasn't ready.
He wasn't ready.
Even Maverick Handley, who was one of the newest guys on the team. I think they're probably friends too. He says it's been an inconsistent year for him, no doubt. He got into a rut, and it's tough, man. I know he'd say this to you. His defense wasn't as good as he wants it to be. He knows there's some catches that he should be making, but it's tough. Said that twice. I don't necessarily know if him being optioned is a demotion as much as him just being the odd man out. I hope that he can use this as a time to get back and look at some film and make some adjustments whenever his time's ready, so he can be back up here and make a difference.
Right.
Well, they saw it.
I think with Westberg coming back, it makes Kobe Mayo purely a first baseman.
It does.
And that takes the ability for them to put Kjerstad as the DH completely out of the equation.
Right.
And as a result, they're saying he's not a good enough fielder to play every day in right field.
Right.
So he is the odd man out.
Of course, Mayo's going to be on first base, and he's hitting 147.
But because Mountcastle's down, you don't have depth at that position,
right.
And so he's up now.
Right.
You know, for the same reason that Kjerstad came up earlier in the year when O'Neill was down and Kauser was down.
Right.
So.
Yeah, and he did have a big RBI, Kobe Mayo.
He did.
I think it was the win on Saturday.
He only has one extra base hit.
Right. Yeah, and he got thrown out stealing. But I thought it was interesting.
He picks a good fight between first and second.
He does. He runs well for a big man. You know, especially he's one of those guys. He's the Chris Davis. He's our version of Chris Davis. Right now. I don't know.
Do we need to go there?
Yeah, I know. It's one of those things. But Emmanuel Rivera was another cat that I thought was, he came up and showed well.
He did.
I like him a lot better at third base than I do first base. I thought he cost him last week with a couple of routine plays that he didn't make at first base. But again, with Westberg coming back, you pretty much got that covered with Urias.
Well, that's actually I wanted to ask that question to you guys. So they faced a lefty last night, and Urias wasn't in the lineup. That tells me it's going to be Westberg at third, Gunnar at short, and Holiday at second, no matter what. So where's Urias at? When's he going to play?
I mean, he's going to give those guys, especially Westberg, first coming back. He's definitely going to be spotted in there for Westy some. I suspect they'll give.
He's been one of the most productive Orioles this
year.
He
is.
You know?
He has been. He's gonna be that guy that spells the other guys.
Yeah.
Every once in a while, he's going to be the DH. every once in a while, and that's just going to be his role, I think, on the team.
Yeah, he's been good against lefties, though. I was surprised yesterday. I guess because it was Westberg's first day back, they wanted to get him in the lineup. But
They did, and he produced a home run in the 9th inning.
He had 2.
So it was nice. It was nice to see him be productive right out of the gate because we missed him, you know, and he will certainly help their statistics against left-handed pitching. I would think having a solid right-handed stick is just imperative for them right now, and I hope they're, you know, sometime later this week, probably over the weekend, they will no doubt activate Tyler O'Neill. He's on his rehab assignments right now, so that's coming up. Be interesting to see who they end up sending back down as the corresponding move there. And I kind of broke away from it with the Kerstad discussion because I really, really needed to give out a bird turd this week because I'm just kind of feeling sour. But the other Orioles, going back to the runs created statistic, the WRC plus, from an Oriole perspective, Gunnar is 70th in all of the major leagues at 117. But our boy Jackson Holliday is sitting there at 77
he's climbing
in all of baseball. So, you know, if you're voting for all-stars right now, he's got to be at least considered.
I think your only 2 options are probably O'Hearn and Holliday. And O'Hearn probably doesn't have a place on the All-Star team.
Yeah.
Well, he's DH, so it'll be
DH.
him or Devers.
Yeah.
That'll get that nod for a starter spot.
Sure.
But Holliday's up against Gleyber Torres for the Tigers, is the leading vote getter right now. So get out and vote for Jackson. He's having as good a year as any second baseman in the AL.
Right.
I mean, you consider where he's come from, too, because he didn't get off to a good start, which probably, you know, that hurt him a little bit. But he's making up a lot of ground.
And last night, although it was depressing outcome and game to watch, but there was a sequence in the middle of that game where he worked a count and got a hit.
Yes.
And then he stole second, and this is all with 2 outs. And then Gunnar worked like an 8 or 9 pitch at bat and drove him in. And that's what you're looking for as an Orioles fan.
You need
is
that.
those 2 guys at the top of the order.
And you know what that does? It gets you a bird of prey right there.
Yeah.
Congratulations,
No,
Jackson.
but you are exactly right, Derek. And I actually thought that very thing. This is exactly what they are looking for out of those couple of guys. You know, you talk about they going back to the spring. You talked about being disruptive on the bases. So with 2 outs, here's your kid, speedy kid. He works a great at bat. Finds a way to get on base, steals a base, and Gunnar knocks him in with 2 outs. That's what they need. Obviously, all baseball teams are looking for that, but they have these number 1 first round draft pick type talent that you expect that kind of stuff from.
And this is where you need Rutschman to be the third cog in that.
Yes, exactly.
Because then you have 3, 4, 2, 3, 4 really being more productive
and
back to back.
And to the point, Rutschman right now, his WRC plus is 102. So he's just 2 percentage points above average in offense. So, you know, it all, unfortunately, we kind of beat this horse to death here the last several weeks about where they're lacking and how many different facets of the game they lack in and out. It depends on the week what the problem is, but there tends to be a problem. So they've got Skubal coming up, I guess, on Thursday. Tarek Skubal is going to pitch against them, so that's not promising. That's Thursday's game, and that's at home at least. And then the Angels come into town over the weekend, and then next week, how many games in a row? 6, 7, 8. They've got a series against Tampa, a 4-game series against Tampa, and then 3 again in New York in the Bronx. So
not an easy month.
Well, and it's interesting because they're going to a minor league park to play Tampa, down in Tampa. I guess it's actually the Yankees spring training facility.
Right, George Steinbrenner Field.
Right. So they're going to the minors to play Tampa, and then they head up to the Bronx. And then they follow that with a home series against Texas, and then they see Tampa again to finish out the month. So,
Got some division games in there to kind of right the ship a little bit.
well, see, this would be a good time to get hot.
Absolutely.
And maybe with the influx of some regulars, they'll be able to do that. I don't know.
Well, you got to hope. That there's always hope, right? Keep hope alive. Who said that?
Yeah, I don't know. I
One quick note, I want to give a shout out to Scott Blewett. He's back in the bullpen. We can't have a reliever with the last name Blewett, but best of luck to Scott this time around. Hopefully you stick, but
Yeah, he's
if
been
not-
DFA'd several times this year by a couple of different teams, including the Orioles. So I don't know. But hit us up on the email line, bbaseball522@gmail.com. And by all means, catch us same time next week right here on your on the radio and on your favorite podcast device. So for the Bird Brains, I'm Jeff Baker.
I'm Dave Biesecker.
and I'm Derek Baker.
Go O's!